On this episode of MythBusters,
we expected something and something happened.
Adam and Jamie have a movie myth they were born for. Can a gas leak and a magazine in a toaster
But in a little bit, it's not going to be very happy in here.
make a room go kaboom?
I love running for safety.
Then,
I'm starting to get a little nervous.
Cary Grant and Tori tackle the tall tale of blue ice.
That is incredible!
Can the contents of an airplane's toilet really fall from the sky
That thing is hauling.
in one frozen chunk?
This is an awesome day.
Who are the MythBusters? Adam Savage and Jamie Heineman.
Am I really that ugly?
Between them, more than 30 years of special effects experience. Joining them, Grant Imahara, Carrie Byron,
Time to wreck this car.
and Tori Belleci.
We survived.
They don't just tell the myths, they put them to the test.
Have you seen the Bourne Supremacy?
I love that movie. I love the whole Bourne trilogy. Have you got a myth from Supremacy we can test?
There's a scene where Bourne broke into an apartment, and he knows the bad guys are coming, so he has to make an escape. What he does is he breaks the gas line where it goes into the stove to let the gas flow. He grabs a magazine, shoves it in the toaster, sets the toaster on, and 20 seconds later, when the magazine sets on fire, the whole apartment blows up. And so Bourne makes his escape.
That's like perfect for us to test.
I think I have a pretty good idea where we should start.
Okay, but before you tell me, I actually want to demonstrate how much I love the Bourne movies. You know, I collect movie props. This is actually Jason Bourne's red bag from the Bourne Identity in the wastebasket from the Swiss bank. Not only that, it's actually full of all of the props that were actually in that bag in the film. All his trinkets and even his stud pistol. It's made of rubber. Isn't that cool?
We need to find out whether a magazine would actually set on fire when it's put in a toaster.
Okay.
There are 3 ingredients to this Bourne-style getaway: the toaster, the magazine, and the natural gas. And first in the mix are 1 and 2. How long does it take to toast a magazine?
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
The guys start the clock using a magazine like the one in the movie and a toaster rigged to stay on.
You know, in the movie, it was already on fire at this point.
As it turns out, toasting a magazine takes a little longer than the 20 seconds of the film.
Oh, 3 minutes over schedule. I think we're really close.
In fact, it takes over 12 minutes before they get ignition.
Hey, we got fire! Ta-da! Remember, kids, we're professionals. So, reality is 12 minutes versus the movie's 25 some odd seconds. Hey, we got fire! What do you think?
Well, what I think is that this magazine is a worst case scenario because look how thick those pages are. And magazines are all different shapes and sizes.
So you think we should try a whole bunch of different kinds of magazines and see if they have different rates at which they catch on fire?
Exactly.
I love it. Let's do it. Lots of toasters now.
It's clear the real-world magazine doesn't light up like its movie counterpart. So now the MythBusters are on the trail of a best-case scenario.
In order to cover our bases here and working up the theory that different types of magazines composed of different kinds of paper are going to catch a light at different rates, we're about to put a half dozen of them to the test. Everything from our original magazine to something much harder to catch on fire, comic book, something that'll probably catch on fire in like seconds. We're gonna put 1 in each of these toasters, start this timer, and log how long each of them takes to catch a light. What could be more fun?
Well, with the 6 magazines in place, let the char grilling challenge commence.
We're experimentally doing something that should just never, ever be done. I like that. No.
Flame.
Number 3, 1 minute, 40 seconds.
This time around, it seems the contenders are a little quicker to toast.
It's 2:20.
Yep. Here we go.
Number 4, 3 minutes, 15 seconds. Oh, number 1, 3 minutes, 20 seconds. Let's listen for that sound.
There we go.
There it is. 4 minutes, 36 seconds.
And finally, bringing up the rear
There it is.
the original magazine at 12 minutes.
As we suspected, it does make a difference what kind of magazine is stuffed in the toaster. The best case scenario is something that amounts to common newsprint, but even that took about 3 times as long as what it did in the movie. Interesting.
So it's clear that even with the best case scenario magazine, toaster ignition takes a lot longer than the 20 seconds it took Bourne. And now to test the next ingredient of this explosive combination, the methane.
Now, methane here is a natural gas, and it's most of what comes out of your stove at home to cook with. It's a flammable gas, but it's not flammable on its own. It actually requires a certain amount of oxygen out of the air in order to burn. How much oxygen? Well, that actually turns out to be a very particular relationship. The relationship of oxygen to flammable gas is called stoichiometry.
To create fire, it takes heat, fuel, and oxygen. And when it comes to flammable gases, the amount of fuel to oxygen is a complex relationship called stoichiometry. Too much fuel or too little, and there'll be nothing close to a flame. But get the perfect mixture, and you get an explosion. Now, according to the movie, it took Bourne 20 seconds to get that explosive ratio of air to gas just right. So now the MythBusters are dialing in to find out exactly what it is.
We know that if we're going to get methane to burn, we need a ratio of between 6 and 17% fuel to air. The ideal range is about 9% methane and the rest air. What we don't know is what that actually means. Does that mean if we are a little off, we get sort of a woof, but if we get right at the 9%, we're getting a real strong bang? Before we go full scale, we want to really know what we're doing. So what we've done is make a 10-inch by 10-inch by 10-inch cubic box. And that'll allow us to really easily dial in on these ratios to see what it means.
And while Jamie is boxing, Adam has the ratios in the bag.
One of the ratios I want to play with is 9% flammable gas to air. This bag holds 9% of the volume of this chamber. I will fill it with gas. I will then hook it up to the chamber, open up both of the valves, press the gas into the chamber. I'll be displacing air that comes out of this little hole right here. Seal it up, walk away, ignite it with a neon transformer, and see what happens.
Adam's bags will help the guys zone in on exactly what ratio of methane to air is explosive. And speaking of methane,
So that we can ignite this thing safely, we're going to remotely turn on this neon transformer that'll create a high voltage spark inside the methane chamber. And here we'll be able to vary the methane concentrations, ignite it, and see what we get.
first up, a test at the very bottom of the stoichiometric zone, 6%.
We're good.
Okay, 6%. In 3, 2, 1.
We expected something and something happened. Our frangible box separated just as we hoped it would, and it's actually kind of a little bit of a I was expecting a little more from an explosion, and I'm interested to see if our optimal stoichiometric ratio gives us that.
Me too.
Well, let's set it up.
Okay.
6% is explosive, but what if Bourne achieved the optimal ratio of 9% methane to air?
9% in 3, 2, 1. Well, that was more energetic.
9% was definitely more energetic. But for Adam, the surprising thing is that at both ratios, they scored the mythical explosion they're looking for.
This is awesome. We think that 6% means we'll see a small pop, 9% means we'll see a big pop. In this case, that's not the case. And that actually makes it look better for this myth. If we're getting a pop at the very lowest end of the stoichiometric range, that's making Bourne's use of this as a diversion technique more feasible. I'm not saying it's probable, but it's making it look more feasible.
You're looking excited.
That's because we have a myth that's spectacular, gross, and challenging all wrapped up into one.
What's the story?
It's the one where the pilot jettisons the contents of an airplane toilet, which promptly freezes at altitude and turns into a deadly projectile.
Ah, you're talking about the myth of blue ice.
Exactly.
When mysterious substances of suspect origin fall from the sky, urban myths are sure to follow. And the conspiracy theory that has the message boards in a spin is the infamous blue ice. And here's how it happens. On a bright sunny day, a passing pilot supposedly jettisons the contents of the toilet's tank. And apparently at high altitudes, the sub-zero temperatures freeze the liquid into a damaging and disgusting missile.
All right, we know a little bit about airplane toilets because we did a myth on them. We know for a fact you can't get sucked into them if you're sitting down.
And we know the reason why it's blue is because they use that chemical to cover the smell.
But what we don't know is, what happens to the waste?
Yeah, can you actually eject the contents in midair?
I guess this is where we start.
So first up, Carrie hits Stockton Airport to find out when and how a pilot dumps his waste.
So you're an airplane technician. What do you think of our old blue ice myth?
Well, Carrie, as you can see from this cockpit, there are thousands of buttons and switches, of which none are labeled dump the toilet.
Which is bad news for the myth. But if the pilot can't jettison the John mid-flight, is there any way the liquid blue waste can escape?
Failure of components.
So there could be a mechanical problem that causes blue ice instead of the pilot.
Yes, like with most systems on an airplane, there are redundancies, and with the lab, it's no different.
Yep, there are 3 fail-safes that have to be breached in order for the liquid to leak. The dump valve on the holding tank, and 2 watertight seals leading to the exterior of the fuselage. If all 3 of those components fail, that's a problem. And to get a closer look, it's that toilet tour Carrie's been waiting for.
So I noticed that there's a sign that says don't throw any foreign bodies into the toilet. If something hard had been thrown in there, like a cell phone, is it possible that that could create a leak?
Totally, that's very important. Any hard object gets lodged up against this seal, it's going to leak.
So if the dump valve seal was compromised, wastewater would flood the pipe, pushing up against the remaining 2 valves.
This is the forward lav access door.
So that leads right up into the toilet.
That's correct.
And it's here on the fuselage that we find those final watertight seals. But could they both fail? And if so, would it lead to a slow leak or a large-scale dump?
Not likely. Is it possible? Absolutely. Multiple components that fail, leading to a problem.
This myth is looking good.
All right, Carrie, so how did it go?
Well, part of this myth isn't looking good. There's no way for the pilot to jettison the contents of a toilet.
True, but that doesn't rule out ice falling off the plane.
That's right, there's still 2 scenarios that could happen. There could be a major malfunction that leads to either all of the contents coming out at once, freezing and falling to Earth, or you could get a nice slow leak that created an ice ball.
Now the question is, how are we going to test them?
Actually, we've been talking to our friends at NASA, and they've agreed to let us use their icing research tunnel, which can simultaneously duplicate temperatures of -20 degrees and wind speeds of up to 250 knots.
That is the perfect conditions for high altitude.
Well, it sounds like before we leave, we're going to have to build a leaky airplane toilet.
Now, this myth is about airplanes, but in order to test it, we don't need to build a full airplane. All we need to do is make something that has similar aerodynamic properties. So, this is our design. And this will have low drag and a place to leak, which are the most important things.
So for their tests at NASA, Carrie builds a waste system designed to fail in 2 ways, either with a slow leak or a catastrophic dump. Then with the wind tunnel simulating a high-altitude flight, they'll be able to determine if blue ice forms in either scenario.
Now, according to NASA specs, it had to be out of aluminum because that's what airplanes are made of, and we were not allowed to weld anything because they didn't want anything breaking apart inside the wind tunnel because there's going to be so much pressure created by the wind. So we had to drill and rivet over 600 rivets to put our airplane together. And what we have right here is our valve. This is what we're gonna have hooked up to a water tank, and we're gonna be doing 2 tests. One where we dump the water completely, and then one where there's a slow leak to find out, can you grow a chunk of ice on the side of a plane?
Jason Bourne knows how to make an explosive exit. But could a magazine in a toaster really toast a gas-filled apartment? After getting to know their enemy in the shop, the guys are ready to go full scale.
If we're going to replicate the natural gas explosion in this guy's apartment from the movie, we're gonna need clearly 2 things. Yeah, they said, get your own show. It'll open all sorts of doors. One is methane, natural gas, which is easy to get. And 2 is the guy's apartment, which we don't actually have. So we've come out to the bomb range where they've got plenty of room. And in a few hours, we're gonna build this guy's apartment. Not to code, we just need it to be a gas containment device that is in the shape of the apartment. But it will be properly appointed, I'm sure.
So to find out if you really can get a room to kaboom with just gas, a magazine, and a toaster, they'll precisely replicate the circumstances of the movie, starting with the apartment dimensions, 16 by 32 feet.
Oh, hello. Are you here for the explosion?
With Adam and his minions working on the 4 walls,
Ow.
it's over to the Heineman to provide cover.
I'm putting together the roof. How this will work is I'm just making 16 by 8 foot wide panels. I'm gonna go ahead and skin them and everything, and then I'm gonna lift them up with the forklift and put them on the roof. Screw them down, we have a roof.
Once the roof has been successfully raised,
It ain't pretty, but it's home.
it's time for the resident exterior decorator to take over.
After you blow enough things up, you start to look for aesthetic finesse in the explosion. I'll give you an example. First hot water heater, when we painted that little house red. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? So we're gonna give the same treatment to this thing. We're gonna paint the outside a lovely orange so that when it finally blows up, the high-speed shot will be especially gorgeous.
Well, it certainly will be explosively tangerine. And while Agent Orange gets ahead, Jamie is busy on the inside.
We need this room to be more or less airtight, or the methane we're going to pump in here in a few minutes will escape, and that would be a bad thing. To do that, I'm using packaging tape because it's quick, it's cheap, and I can remove it after we're done with this thing, along with the screws that we're using to build this room, because I want to recycle the lumber. I don't like to waste stuff. And of course, that is assuming that this isn't all splinters after the explosion.
Yep, as per usual, anything they don't destroy is recycled. It's the MythBusters way.
There. I wouldn't call it livable, but I'd call it blow-upable.
It is blow-upable, and the final finishing touches are to furnish it before they step on the gas.
Excellent.
It's got a nice view here, you know, the valley out the window there.
Don't you just know that Jamie's gonna hate this?
The house may be complete, but soon it'll be filled with highly flammable gas. And in the event they don't get an ignition, Adam has created this.
What I've got here is an exhaust system so that I can evacuate the gas from this room. Because one of the most dangerous things that could happen to us in this experiment is nothing. We found this on Cell Phone Destroy's gas station. We had a room full of gasoline fumes, and we didn't get it to ignite, and nobody wants to approach a room full of fumes. Hello, explosion. Hello. So, if nothing happens, I've got a switch I can turn that will start these fans all up and get all the gas out of this room so it's safe to do a reset. I think that's the last piece of the puzzle. I'll get to a safe location.
And that's not the only safety precaution they're taking with this test.
This is our methane outlet, which has tinsel on it, which we will be able to see moving if gas is coming through here on our remote camera. This is our tank of methane. We have a regulator and a flow meter attached to it. Now, this rig is set up to give us the same kind of input of gas into our house as you would normally have in a domestic gas line going into an apartment. Now, this valve here I have with a line attached to it that goes to our bunker. And I'm going to pull on this line if there's anything that bothers me about this setting, because, you know, it's gas, it's flammable, If there's something we don't like, we want to be able to shut it off. And from this distance, I can safely pull the plug if there's something I don't like.
The list of things Jamie doesn't like may be a long one, but if the explosion of the movie is anything to go by, putting this myth to the test could be very dangerous.
Well, it's a little post-earthquakey, but I think this is a fine experimental space.
It's fine now, but in a little bit, it's not going to be very happy in here.
Not if everything goes well.
No.
Well, shall we get started?
Yeah.
After you.
Thank you.
Carrie, Grant, and Tori are tackling the infamous tall tale of blue ice. Can a leaking toilet midair lead to a deadly chunk of ice down there? To find out for sure,
Wow.
Tori and Grant touch down in Nerd Nirvana.
All stations reporting with a go, no go.
Roger, prepare to release the geek. Because this place has a heap of hardcore hardware.
This massive fan is the heart of NASA's icing tunnel. It's powered by a 5,000 horsepower direct drive electric motor. It has 12 individual custom fan blades for a diameter of 25 feet. It's capable of generating wind speeds over 300 knots. And that's only half the equation. This is the other half of the equation, the icing tunnel itself. The wind comes rushing through here, refrigerated to minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit.
Those are the spectacular specs. And now, to put them to good use.
The way we're going to test this is we're going to stick our section of fuselage into their wind tunnel.
Does this mean I'm the R2-D2?
Oh boy. And recreate the same wind speeds and temperatures that you would find at altitude. Then we're going to create a leak inside the valve. Let it sit there and see if those conditions will cause that blue liquid to form into a chunk of ice.
Remember, there are 2 leaky valve scenarios the team will test. And first up is the catastrophic dump.
What I think is going to happen is we're going to open the valve, all the fluid's going to come out, and it's just going to go essentially atomize into nothing.
Grant's skeptical of a blue icicle, but to find out for sure, he fills the toilet with some pseudo-blue waste.
Smells like a chemical toilet. All right, start the test.
We have our model in position. We're ready to go.
All right, fire it up.
All right, let's go. Fire it up.
Maximum warp. Oh, sorry, I just made that really
We're
geeky,
trying to
didn't
make
I?
science cool, dude.
Here we go.
And for cool science, let's make it so. The fan winds up, whipping up a 290-mile-an-hour wind speed. Then the heat exchanger drops the air temperature to a high altitude minus 20 degrees Celsius.
Our model is holding together perfectly.
Then they're ready to pull the pin on the catastrophic failure test. Will the blue liquid instantly freeze into a chunk of blue ice?
So this is full tanked up in 3, 2, 1, go! Oh my God! Look at how fast it's going out. That is awesome.
As soon as the liquid exits the aircraft, it's ripped away by the shearing force of the wind. And despite the bitterly cold air temperatures, it's unable to form the mythical slice of ice.
So behind me are the results of our complete release test where we dumped the entire contents of the waste tank. Now, it didn't atomize all the way because you can see some of it formed on the surface here, but it also did not form one big chunk that could fall on someone.
Yep, although most of the blue waste was vaporized on contact with the wind, some did form a thin layer, just not enough for a blue icicle.
But I mean, it's incredible. We got an actual layer of ice, and pretty quickly.
All right, well, let's try again, and this time have a slow leak.
All right, let's see if that gives us a big chunk of ice.
Okay, so we're ready to do our slow leak test. My personal feeling is that we'll probably get maybe a line of frozen liquid. Maybe that's building up, but I don't think there's any way we're gonna get anything this big freezing and falling off the fuselage.
Once again, the NASA techs simulate the same high-altitude conditions and then sabotage the plumbing for the drip test. And once the leak is leaking,
quick the ice is building up.
The results are as astonishing as they are immediate.
Dude, this is looking great. And it's blue.
That is fantastic. It hasn't even been 2 minutes yet.
Oh my gosh. That is incredible.
The liquid moving over the surface of the aircraft is protected from the extreme wind speeds by what's called a boundary layer.
What that means is that not all the air traveling over the airplane goes at the same rate. In certain areas, it actually travels a lot slower.
Which creates a protective cushion where ice crystals can form.
This thing is like this big. I call that baseball size right there.
If that whole thing broke off, that would be just like the Myth.
The guys are blown away, unlike the ice. The question is, how big can it get, and will it fall off?
I just can't believe how big it's getting.
20 minutes later, with a diameter around 10 inches, the blue icicle seems to have reached a size plateau.
It's approaching soccer ball size.
And with plenty of water still in the tank, that's not the limiting factor. But Grant thinks he knows what is.
Now, an interesting thing to note here is that as the ice is getting thicker and pushing away from the skid, it's actually pushing its way out of the boundary layer. Once it exits the boundary layer, it actually hits the faster-moving air and just goes away. It doesn't allow it to freeze up, which may be a reason why the ice doesn't get really, really big.
So with this fuselage, these wind speeds, and this air temperature, this is as big as it's going to get.
But let's see if we can get it to fall off. Let's pretend like it's at its final descent, temperatures are rising. Maybe we can get it to break off and find out exactly what happens when it does.
Perfect.
All right, start warming it up.
It's a good theory, because as the aircraft descends and the air temperature warms,
Oh, we're getting bigger chunks breaking off.
surely it's only a matter of time before the blue ice barnacle becomes a blue ice missile.
-7 degrees.
And as it turns out, when the wind tunnel conditions match those of an altitude of 12,000 feet, we have liftoff.
That thing blew up in one giant chunk. Wow! Dude, that was perfect.
It was a perfect illustration that this myth has a foundation in aerodynamic fact.
That is unbelievable. That is solid ice. And it happened so quickly.
And it came off in one giant chunk.
This myth is starting to look very, very believable.
Yeah, but you know what the next step is? What happens to the ice after it falls off?
I can't believe it.
Here's the story we're testing. Jason Bourne, knowing that the bad guys are coming, wanting to buy himself a little extra time for the chase, opens up the gas line of the house he's in, walks over to a toaster, grabs a magazine and sticks it in that toaster and sets it as a remote fuse, and then he exits the house. 30 seconds later, a massive explosion gives him the lead time he's looking for. Now, is that remotely plausible? Well, those are the circumstances we've got set up in this house right here, and that's going to be our first test.
In other words, this test will be exactly like the movie, but with one exception.
According to our testing, it actually takes about 2 minutes for the toaster to set the magazine on fire. So that means that we've had about 4 times the amount of gas going into the room, and that 2 minutes is what Bourne had for the whole house to blow up. Now, that 2 minutes, in our case, is only allowing about 7 cubic feet of methane to go into the house, and it's rising towards the roof. Meanwhile, our source of ignition is about 15 feet away. I don't expect to see any kind of explosion at all.
And that's down to stoichiometry. In theory, for a room this size, 7 cubic feet of methane will be too low a concentration to ignite.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay, Adam, go ahead and turn on the gas.
Copy that.
But this is MythBusters, and it's not a fact until you test it.
I love running for safety.
I can see the gas going in,
It's the
and
gas going in. I can't see the... Oh, I see smoke coming off the newspaper.
yes,
That's great.
it's a good sign.
It's pretty eerie watching flammable gas go into a room in which we've started a fire.
Or are about to. I see some fire.
Fire, great. All right.
The magazine may finally be on fire, but the methane is not igniting.
Oh man, that toaster's totally burning.
And even after a further 60 seconds, there's still no hint of a Hollywood blast.
Gas is off.
Starting up the fans to evacuate the room.
That was cool.
That was very cool. I was a little tense. Flammable gas, a fire, no boom.
No boom. So it's time to send in the MythBusters Fire Brigade.
Oh, yeah.
There's your problem. So we knew from our small-scale experiments that flammable gas plus fire does not always get the reaction that you're looking for. The mixture has to be perfect. And we posited that replicating the circumstances from the Bourne film in full scale would not yield a reaction, and that's in fact exactly what happened. It's rare, but it turns out we were right. I learn when I'm wrong, but I don't mind being right from time to time. So we replicated all the circumstances for Bourne's evasion technique, and it totally didn't work. I think that's a pretty clean busting of the myth.
Yeah, it's busted. But, you know, I was thinking,
Yeah.
if we put something in that room that burned for longer, eventually something's going to happen.
You mean eventually the gas and the air will reach a mixture whereby we will get some kind of reaction?
Yeah.
I love it. I think that should be the next test.
Although the exact circumstances of the movie won't get the bad guys off your tail, the question is, could a little more gas and a longer fuse get the big Bourne boom?
We know from our small-scale testing and our research that it takes a minimum 6% fuel-to-air mix for methane and air to support ignition. The way we've got it planned out, if we take the contents of this methane tank and put it in our test room, we'll have the right fuel-air mix. So it's just a question of connecting the flame that we've built in there with that gas. If that happens, she's going to blow.
How are we going to get a long, burning, open flame? Well, we're throwing out the toaster and the magazine, and we're going with a supermarket fireplace log. Light this puppy on fire, it'll burn for at least an hour. This is for real.
The log will burn while the gas builds to the 6% ratio.
That's it.
But when it hits the stoichiometric zone, will they get the bad guy repelling detonation of the movie? Adam has his doubts.
What's going to happen exactly? Well, look, we know that the ideal mixture of air to flammable gas is a ratio, and it has a range. Presumably, the reaction we're going to get out of this next experiment will be a reaction at the bottom of that range. So I don't expect it to be a fire and brimstone massive explosion. I expect it to be more like a really big champagne pop, like pah!
Back in the safety of the bunker, at first, things go just as planned.
Did you leave a log burning on the kitchen table? Aw, crap, I did.
But in a dramatic turn of events, after 4 minutes,
Oh, you know what's happening? The gas is actually making the whole room catch on fire.
things suddenly get incendiary
I see smoke on the...
Oh, we're burning this building down.
and out of control.
Uh-oh. There we go, we had a blowout. That's it. Well, I don't know if we're putting this building out.
Oh, we should get up there with the hose.
All right, let's turn off the gas.
Gas is off.
The MythBusters initiate the safety protocols
Watch out.
and cautiously approach their apartment inferno.
Don't go in.
I'm not seeing any flame.
There's the hole we blew.
It may not have been the blast of the movie,
It's a horror show in there.
but the methane sure made a mess of the apartment.
Unlike your typical, it was clear that the gas made the atmosphere in here really rich, and so the fire started burning much hotter and higher than it normally would have with just straight air. So all of a sudden the fire's going up and reaching the ceiling, we could see smoke coming out of the top, and then the mixture hit the bottom of the stoichiometric range, and we saw this whomp across the whole room. I'm seeing broken glass on a bunch of windows, on the back double doors. It's clear that we got a significant reaction, but nothing close to what we saw in the movie.
Nothing close to a kaboom, but certainly enough of a conflagration to distract the bad guys.
It's really clear from all the melted plastic in there, and even our exhaust fans melted. It got super crazy hot in there very quickly. I mean, just the whole room was absolute. I didn't even know what temperature it could be at, but it was really hot.
But you know we're not going to leave it there.
No.
So here's where we're at. We've looked into airline toilets and found that they can leak through an external valve.
Is it possible? Absolutely.
We made our own fuselage, went to NASA's wind tunnel, and found that you could actually form a giant chunk of ice, which then fell off the airplane. Now what we're going to test is what happens to that ice after it falls. What we need to see for this myth to be confirmed is for that ice to fall through the air as one giant chunk and hit the ground as one piece with deadly force.
This is the final piece of the blue ice puzzle. While falling from 12,000 feet at a terminal velocity of 160 miles per hour, will the ice stay in one piece? Or will wind erosion and warming temperatures cause it to break up into harmless blue rain? To track that, the team has a spectacular plan of action.
We have our airplane. We're going to load it up with a large chunk of ice, take it up to altitude, and then throw it out. Now we're going to have a few skydivers jump out with the ice to track. Carrie is going to be one of those skydivers.
Yep, and skydiving team leader Nick also has the crucial job of timing the drop. Because if the myth is true and the blue ice falls in one chunk, missing the mark could be deadly.
Let's hope they can see that.
So Nick, what's involved in actually calculating where something's going to land?
Well, first off, we need to figure out how fast this object is going to free fall. The second thing is we have a lot of wind here, so as the wind blows, the object's going to blow with it. The third thing is, too, the airplane has forward speed when we chuck out the ice out of the plane, and with that creates a forward throw. So all these three factors is what we use, and we make an educated guess of where we need to drop it from the aircraft to land right on the target. Are you ready?
That sounds simple. So, Grant, what's the plan?
Okay, so here's the plan. Carrie and our expert Nick will go in the plane with the ice. They're going to go up, and based on the prevailing conditions and Nick's calculations, they'll know when to release the ice at an altitude that they deem safe. Nick will jump out, and so will Carrie, following the ice down.
You'll be fine.
I'm gonna double check this.
Meanwhile, Tori and I will be on the ground tracking the ice in the air and looking for the impact zone.
And as for the blue ice, well, earlier, Carrie prepared a similar-sized block to the test at NASA. It's approximately the diameter of a basketball, eye-catching, and easily retrievable.
To make sure that we can watch this ice fall, I've done something a little different. I've made it red instead of blue so that it's going to stand out on the blue sky. I've added some really long streamers so that we can track it, and I'm going to put a GPS on it.
Now, for this myth to be confirmed, we need to see that block of ice drop from altitude and get to the Earth in one solid chunk.
Good luck. Good luck, you guys. Thank you.
What I think is going to happen, I think Carrie is going to scream her head off. She may potentially pee her suit, but I think that block of ice is going to land on the ground in one big chunk.
Okay, here's the package. Good luck.
And despite all of their precautions, they will need some luck. Their goal is to drop the ice and Carrie from 12,000 feet.
Here we go, Carrie.
The height at which Grant and Tori saw the ice release from the fuselage at NASA.
Okay, now I'm starting to get a little nervous.
But will it remain intact? Traveling with an energy of 392,000 joules, its impact will certainly be deadly. However, if it melts in the rising temperatures, it'll be rendered harmless.
We've done many experiments where we drop things from altitude or throw things out of planes, and you know what? My feeling is that this ice is going to fall down in one piece and land with a tremendous amount of force.
Golf?
In fact, I think it's going to land so hard, it's probably going to leave a little crater down at the ground. Whether it's going to break up or melt, no way. It's going to be one giant chunk.
At 12,000 feet, Carrie and her free-falling friends are preparing to deploy their blue ice cargo.
All I gotta do is look at the ice. One job.
But will it break up on descent or have the devastating impact internet reports claim?
Oh boy. This is it, huh?
If the team misjudged the timing of the drop by even a second, a 35-pound projectile traveling at 160 miles per hour could crash through a neighboring house. But that's only if the ice actually stays in one chunk. If it breaks up, the only thing busted will be the myth.
I got them. They're approaching the drop zone.
So this is it. It's time to drop out and jump off for science.
Okay, the ice is away. Ah, it's over there.
In a stunning piece of free-fall camera work, Nick manages to capture the ice as it plummets.
Oh, look how fast it's falling.
That thing is falling.
And Carrie can see that it's so far so good. With the ice already at a balmy 5,000 feet, it's still completely intact.
Look, it's standing in one chunk.
Dude, that's crazy.
But will it stay that way as they enter the final few thousand feet of descent?
I see the ice right there, and it's not near the target. That's great.
Do you see the size of that impact?
And did you see it stayed in one chunk?
Wow, that's maybe only 150 feet from the drop zone.
I saw the ice go down, and I swear I saw it land. It stayed intact.
Let's go meet Carrie and we'll go find it.
All right, let's go get it.
Hi, Tori. Hi, Grant.
Here she
Oh,
comes.
she's coming in hot.
You made it.
Wow. Nice.
What a ride, and what a test. And no wonder Carrie's adrenaline is off the charts.
Good job.
Let's go check out the ice. Did you see it?
Yeah,
Did you see
yeah,
it?
right over.
Everything went according to plan. For the majority of its descent, there was visual contact, confirming that the ice retained its shape and mass. And then, thanks to Carrie's visual aids and Nick's awesome aim, finding the impact site is a breeze.
There's the streamer.
Is it intact?
I mean, it was a chunk before it hit the ground. And that is still a chunk of ice.
Check it out. It dug itself into the ground.
Wow, that is a serious impact.
Yep, and it may have melted slightly in the time it took to find it, but the crater created is a clear testament to its destructive power.
This is the size of the block of ice that we threw out of our plane, which is very similar to the size of the chunk of ice that we formed in our wind tunnel at NASA that fell off. That block of ice reached terminal velocity very quickly, and it left a sizable impact crater. And what's more, it stayed pretty much intact all the way down to impact.
Because when we actually got to the site where the ice had hit, it really looked like all of the ice chunks I had seen on the internet that were the mythical blue ice that had come down in people's houses. Okay, a pilot can't release all of the toilet water at once, so that part's busted, but I think the phenomena is confirmed. I mean, it made it all the way to the ground.
Totally confirmed.
I agree 100%.
Confirmed. But 3 mechanical failures leading to blue ice falling on your house is in reality incredibly unlikely.
I don't be looking up for blue ice to fall on my head now, right?
Dude, I'm gonna get blue ice insurance.
I know a guy. So
Yeah?
let me know. I'll give you his number.
At the MythBusters mansion, they've been renovating Bourne style.
No boom.
However, the myth as it appears in the movie is busted. But it ain't over until the man in the beret gets a big Bourne boom. So next, they're upping the ante with more gas.
Now, when we empty this tank into that house, that means that we'll have just over 9% methane to air in there. And that happens to be the butter zone for an explosion.
The guys know from small scale that 9% netted them the most energetic boom. But this is large scale. Will this test rip apart the apartment Bourne style? Before they blow it up, they need to spruce it up.
We've swapped out all the windows and doors. All these holes that got warped and opened, we're gonna actually lay in a bunch of stripping. we've probably tripled the cohesive strength of this building, and that ought to give us just the boom we're looking for.
When we first put this building together, I was impressed at how poorly we were able to do it. And yet, I think we've made it even worse.
Even worse. But for this attempt, they're doing things slightly differently.
Jamie's known for how he handles his fans.
This time around, I'm running the methane into the house through this hose that I've attached to the floor, and I've drilled a lot of little holes in the hose so that we'll get these jets of gas coming out that will mix with the air that is being pushed across them with these fans. Kind of like a blender.
Just mix the air all along.
Yeah. This swirling mass of air, I'm hoping, will distribute this fuel-air mix throughout the room, and hopefully that'll make the difference between a poof and a bang.
Jamie's fantastic method will circulate the methane throughout the apartment. And with the dangerous ratio of 9% gas to air, they'll need something more sophisticated for ignition.
We don't need a toaster and a magazine anymore because we need precise control over when we set the fire. So we've brought back out the neon transformer from the small-scale testing with the addition of a little piece of paper here. Go ahead and plug it in. We're going to be able to set a fire exactly when we want to set a fire.
Exactly when they achieve the Goldilocks ratio of 9% methane to air.
Fans are rolling. That's the last piece of the puzzle. Shall we get to a safe place and go boom?
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's turn on the gas.
Okie dokie.
All right, we got about 5 minutes. Let's get to the bunker. Fire in the hole.
Hopefully.
Actually, I think they need a new signal for us. It'd be like, fire in the hole, hopefully. Fire in the hole, hopefully.
Hopefully is right. The precise stoichiometric ratio should be enough to detonate their apartment. So our fire starters take cover as the methane fills the room.
We're down below 20 cubic feet per minute, and we're about 100 psi. So I'm thinking we should go whenever you're ready.
All right.
With the room filled with 9% methane, will this finally yield the Hollywood blowout?
All right, here we go. Ideal gas-air mixture, Bourne explosion in 3, 2, 1. Oh, yeah! That is awesome. We blew out the whole front.
Yeah,
We couldn't have done that if we planned.
that was perfect.
And there you have it. One magnificent, made-to-order apartment explosion. But unlike the movie detonation, this one is polite enough to put itself out. Well, almost.
I hope this is a cautionary tale what happens when you mix MythBusters with science.
Okay, here's the thing. While that was fairly exciting, I mean, we blew out the wall, I want to point out that we didn't break any glass. There was no bang. It was a whoosh. And that's something entirely different than what we saw in the movie. The fact that this was an ideally mixed mixture with fans and everything in the exact quantity, and that's the best we could do, kind of tells you what the real deal is. It's not what the movie showed.
Clearly, we were born for this job.
Yeah, but it's kind of too bad. That was a nice view in that house.